Hello and welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Inka Vat. US Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin has paid a surprise visit to Cambodia in a bid to restart military exercises that were halted in 2017 by Phnom Penh. How will Beijing's closest ally in Southeast Asia respond? And can Washington overcome deep suspicions of Phnom Penh's strengthening Sino relations, including over an alleged Chinese naval base in the country, and Cambodia's human rights abuses? After nearly 4 decades, Prime Minister Hun Sen transferred power to his US-educated son Hun Manet in August 2023. Does this provide Washington with a chance to reset relations, even though so far Hun Manet has maintained his father's pro-China policies? Joining us to discuss this are Liou To-hai, National Chengchi University College of International Affairs Adjunct Distinguished Professor, and Vincent Chao, Taipei City Councilor and former Taipei Economic and Cultural Office in Washington political head. A very warm welcome to you both on the show today. US Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin flew directly from the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore to Cambodia for a one-day visit. He met with former Prime Minister Hun Sen, current Prime Minister Hun Manet, and Defense Minister Tay Sea. Hun Sen, the former Prime Minister, is Hun Manet's father. They discussed ways to strengthen defense ties in support of regional peace and security, including through Cambodian access to US military education programs, as well as military training exercises on disaster assistance and demining training, according to a Pentagon statement. So, Vincent, if I can come to you first, what's the biggest strategic picture behind starting military-to-military exchanges?
So for a long time, Cambodia has been seen as ASEAN's weakest link when it comes to China. And we saw this on full display in, I think it was 2016, and the time afterward when there were a lot of discussions within ASEAN on how to deal with the tribunal ruling on the South China Sea. And I think there was initial anticipation that ASEAN would come together in a more, I think, stronger stance in support of the Philippines, and in condemnation of basically what the International Tribunal's ruling was, which is that China's claims in the South China Sea were illegal and not based on international law. So unfortunately, Cambodia threw all of that, all of that to waste, because what ended up happening was that I think the Cambodians within this ASEAN gathering were very insistent that a more neutral position should be taken. And this position was later endorsed by Beijing, with Beijing saying that they thought that Cambodia would be remembered for making the right decision in future times. So my point being is that in this collective unity of ASEAN, Cambodia was, and Laos to a certain extent, have been seen as having the closest relations with China, and that has been problematic for countries like the United States that have wished for more unity when it comes to dealing with issues ranging from the South China Sea to technology and trade and so forth. So I do think the United States would have an interest in trying to rebuild a relationship with Cambodia following their transfer of power. I mean, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin's trip there was the first ever trip exclusively for a bilateral meeting that any U.S. Secretary of Defense has ever taken. I mean, I think his previous trip was for an ASEAN meeting. So that goes on to show quite strongly how much the U.S. has chosen to emphasize this potentially growing relationship with Cambodia.
And Professor Liu, what's in it for Cambodia? Why would they want to go along with this with the U.S.?
I think it's Cambodia's long-term goal. You can easily find out why Hun Sen sent his sons to study in the United States and in the UK. Obviously, eventually, he would like to have a better relationship with the West. If you look at the map, Cambodia happened between China and Vietnam, 2 powerful neighboring states. So that is why Cambodia has tried its best, hopefully, wants to reduce its dependence on Vietnam economically, strategically, dependence on China. So that is why the only country actually can help him, Hun Sen, United States.
All right. Vincent, do you agree that they want to reduce dependence on these neighbors?
So I think, the answer is yes, but of course it's very complicated because, China has been a political lifeboat for Hun Sen for decades now, and China has always been seen by Cambodia, I think, in the past, as a political bulwark against Vietnamese influence as well. So there's quite a complicated relationship there, but I completely agree with the professor in a way that, there's a lot in it for Cambodia. I mean, diversification of relations not only, I think, has impact on a trade and economic level, but also has impact on a political level. And China is increasingly seen by not only partners in the region, but also entire international community as somewhat of an authoritarian state that is isolated from this global community of nations. And so if Cambodia continues to stick with China, I think there will be difficulties in terms of Cambodia showing that it's able to make independent, sovereign foreign policy decisions. So by diversifying their relations towards the United States, I do think that gives Cambodia more choices, particularly with a younger leadership in place.
Professor Liou, how would China take this? How would it see it? Probably wouldn't be very happy.
For China, anyway, China has already, occupied a very advantageous position, given the geographic proximity. Plus, in the past decades, China has greatly enhanced its economic and military relations with Cambodia. So everything is, from Chinese perspective, is already set.
Right.
Just try to prevent Cambodia moving away from China. But that's not easy because the geographic location matters.
And do you think that the recent upgrade of relations between Vietnam and the US, do you think this is having any impact?
Actually, Cambodia and Vietnam, from time to time, they tend to fight with each other in Indochina. So that is why, as we just mentioned about China's relations with Cambodia, have greatly enhanced. So that is why China, the One Belt, One Road initiative, the high-speed railway already reached Laos and then Vietnam. Laos first, that Vietnam got very nervous that then Vietnam accepted the Chinese high-speed railway into the Vietnam in the only northern part. But at least the Chinese there. But for Cambodia, not yet. Now it's Thailand, Laos, Thailand, and then Cambodia. So that is why Cambodia has to watch carefully on both sides, Vietnam and China, plus the United States.
Right.
Try to, in a best position for Cambodia to benefit from three sides.
But it's interesting that you said that Beijing probably feels like it's coming from a position of strength, so it's probably not that concerned for the time being. Vincent, let's move to Hun Manet's background.
Yeah.
Both him and Lloyd Austin are alumni of the US's sort of elite military academy, that's West Point, although it's sort of decades apart. Now, in addition to his West Point education, though, Hun Manet also holds a master's degree in economics from New York University and also a doctorate from the UK. So given his Western education, how likely do you think it is that his leadership could provide a pivot in foreign policy?
I guess I would say this. I would temper expectations that a Western education nominally will lead to an understanding and acceptance of Western liberal values. I think the two things are separate. I mean, as we saw very clear in the case of North Korea. I mean, when the current North Korean leadership took office, I mean, people thought, well, he was educated, went to boarding school in Switzerland, had access to all these foreign information and this foreign circle of friends, and he turned out almost exactly like his father. So I do think that there's going to be a lot of real politics at play within Cambodia. I mean, there was relatively smooth transition. He has now assumed leadership. His father is now president of the Senate. So the Huns are still firmly in control of Cambodia as a whole. But at the same time, I do think that he would be, even if he were so inclined, we don't know, but I do think that he would be somewhat reluctant to change the status quo in that respect. With that being said, however, I mean, a little optimism should still be in play. And I do think that his meeting with Lloyd Austin in Phnom Penh, the things that were said during that meeting, including enhancing military academy training and so forth, I think that does show that there is some thaw in the relationship that has been sort of put on ice ever since Phnom Penh severed both the training as well as the U.S. naval facilities that were in play, I think, about a decade ago. So I do think that there are opportunities there that should be harnessed, but people should avoid optimism of the relationship.
Professor Liou, let's talk about the relationship between the father and son then. How much influence has Hun Sen still got, after almost 4 decades of power, over his son's direction?
I believe as long as his father is alive, and Han Manet can hardly make a big change, but small change is possible. At least I think both of them believe now it's time to develop its economy. Cambodia's economy now is still in the less developed countries category. So that is why Han Manet has these assets, because his MA and the PhD both came from the economics. So that means that he must be familiar with economy, how to build up the Cambodia's economy. As we just mentioned about the U.S. relationship with Cambodia, I believe that they really admired Vietnam. Vietnam got the semiconductor industries, technology, investment a lot from the West. This is something Cambodia would like to see. So that is why Han Manet's background is very important.
Absolutely, and we know obviously that Vietnam has 6-7%, even higher projected growth. Let's turn now to the 15-day Golden Dragon 2024 military exercises that Cambodia held with China. So Ream Naval Base in the Gulf of Thailand. For this exercise, the Chinese military stationed the amphibious landing ship Qilian Shan and the Type 680 training ship Ji Guang near Ream Base. And of course, there were also the 2 corvettes that the PLA has stationed actually at Ream Base almost consistently since December. So, Vincent, let me come to you. Why are those, let's deal with the 2 corvettes, why are they stationed at Ream Naval Base?
Well, they're there to confirm everybody's worst fears, which is that Ream Naval Base will service Chinese vessels, if not on a permanent basis, at least on a temporary basis. So, I mean, these are long-standing concerns by Western countries that China's investment in upgrading the infrastructure at Ream Base would have military implications. And Cambodia, over the past few years, has been quite insistent that it will not. They say that there is a clause in the Constitution that forbids foreign military vessels from using their naval bases on a permanent basis. But what we have seen here, particularly in terms of how public it was, is that, well, number one, that Chinese has stationed vessels there. The Chinese have done that. And number two, they've been willing to make that public. So the Cambodian defense minister was recently at Ream Base when he actually inspected these Chinese PLA and troops that were being stationed aboard these vessels, and these photos were then published on Cambodia's kind of government services. So I do think that on one hand, it's probably a manifestation of something that has been years in building. I mean, Ream Base isn't something that was started by Han Manet. It was started by his father, this cooperation project with China. So that's a manifestation of that. But number two, I think it is also a manifestation that China is quite intent and serious about expanding its military presence in Cambodia, particularly on the naval front.
Professor Liu, what is the strategic significance of this base here in Cambodia for China?
Oh, I think very important, given what happened between China and United States. The strategic tit for tat has been greatly enhanced. And then about the South China Sea issue, now the China and the Philippines also engaged very dangerous, tit for tat. So in that case, if you're familiar with South China Sea, China is in the north. So if anything happened in Philippines, in particular U.S. is involved. In that case, China has to go from the north to the south. Long way to go. It could be sabotaged by Vietnam, or so that is why you see this triangle: Cambodia, Vietnam, Philippines. So if there is a deep sea port like Sihanoukville, very close to the Ream naval base, linked together, plus the canal we are talking about it, together. That can make China very efficient when it comes to in response to the emergency. More than that, why Chinese vessels stayed there? I believe they must engage in some kind of underwater exploration. Right. So in that case, in the future, if Chinese familiar with the underwater situation, then Chinese submarine, Chinese aircraft carriers could go there. In that case, that will be totally different. If some like U.S. aircraft carrier has to rethink about it, okay, if they want to approach here, if they really get into the South China Sea, immediately they will feel the two-front attack from the north, from the south.
Right.
So that is why this is a very important strategic location from a Chinese perspective.
Okay, so Ream Naval Base was originally funded by the United States, and in the past the US and Cambodia conducted the Angkor Sentinel joint military exercises there. However, in 2016 China and Cambodia began their annual Golden Dragon exercise, and in 2017 the Cambodian government cancelled its military exercises with the US. According to US officials, China secured exclusive rights to use parts of Ream Base through a secret deal with Cambodia in 2019. By 2020 Cambodia had dismantled the US-built facilities, and in 2022 China began assisting in upgrading the base. So Vincent, how open do you think Hun Manet will be to US overtures in the military space given this history?
I think it's too early to say, to be honest. I think a lot of waiting and watching will still be in order to fully understand his objectives, his motives, and what he wants to see out of the relationship. I do have to say is that, I mean, the U.S. has long-standing concerns about Hun Sen's leadership, the lack of transparency, lack of democracy, the human rights abuses, and so forth. I mean, when I served in Washington, D.C., I had actually had many opportunities to interact with Sam Rainsy, the head of Cambodia's opposition, who's in exile, as well as his daughter. And my point being is that these concerns about the lack of democracy in Cambodia are still very real. And so I do think that for both sides, Cambodia and the United States, both of them are still kind of in the exploratory phase to see that there is a leadership transition, yes. This younger prime minister is Western educated, yes, but are there opportunities to move that relationship forward? And I do think that Lloyd Austin's trip there was an initial feeler. I think we'll probably see more feelers as time goes by, and if there's an opportunity to build on the relationship, I think that opportunity will be taken despite the human rights and democracy concerns because of Cambodia's strategic weight and presence in the region.
Yeah, very interesting point, Professor Liou. You know, traditionally the US has been very strong on criticizing human rights, and it would, in order to form a strategic partnership with Cambodia, would need to almost overlook that, which Vincent has said, you know, has been a long-standing problem. So do you think that the US might just do that and sort of categorize? I mean, we can talk about Saudi Arabia, Vietnam, India. These are all sort of a more pragmatic approach by the US government, sort of choosing to overlook rights abuses.
Yeah, I think when it comes to national interest, people can have from time to time, actually in the you know, post-Cold War era or 21st century, economic interest is very important. So that is why from time to time you need to prioritize your national interest. Which one is come to the first? Human rights number one, or economic interest number one, or strategic interest number one? So in the Cambodia's case, I believe US will focus on strategic interest rather than human rights. You're talking about human rights, China, Vietnam, Cambodia, they are all authoritarian regime. How can you, you know, split them? It's impossible. So that is why US needs to use different approach. I think they want to focus too much on that part. On the other hand, I think US might, like Biden administration, might offer some olive branch relating to investment and technology. That's what Cambodia want. That's how can they get Cambodia some positive response.
Right. So if Hun Manet plays his cards right, then that should be what they're looking for. So starting August, Cambodia and China plan to jointly construct a canal connecting Phnom Penh to the Gulf of Thailand. We're showing a map there. This project has caused unease in downstream Vietnam and raised concerns in the United States. Vincent, so what would you say are the biggest concerns?
I mean, there's a number of concerns. Phnom Penh is quite far, actually, from the Gulf of Thailand. It's about 180 kilometers away. And so what this canal that they're aiming to do with the Chinese seeks to accomplish is to connect two major rivers that border Phnom Penh with the Gulf of Thailand, allowing military vessels to sail directly inland into Cambodia. Now, that would be fine by itself, but of course the problem is these rivers also connect to inland Vietnam. And so I guess the very real fear within Vietnam right now is that by connecting these rivers with the Gulf of Thailand, Chinese military vessels, of which we have already talked about, there's no shortage of them in Cambodia right now, could potentially use that as a gateway directly into, I would say, the heart of Vietnam or heart of Cambodia. So there's the strategic implications there, but there's also, I think, broader human rights economic implications simply because of the number of people that will be displaced along that proposed route, the amount of places that will be flooded, farmland that will be flooded, whether people are being given adequate compensation or they're being taken out of their area against their will. So there's a myriad, I think, of economic and social issues at play. But I think aside from that as well is sort of the Chinese involvement part. Because what we've seen in many other large-scale infrastructure projects around the world is that China does everything. They come in and then they end up signing 99-year leases for exclusive use or exclusive economic rights for that specific piece of infrastructure. And there are, I think, concerns within Cambodia right now in terms of what the deal with China is, what the deal with China could be in the future, and whether, in fact, that would give the Chinese economic access or economic control over sort of a very vital economic corridor that could be built in the future. So all of these concerns, I think, added up mean that there are going to be a lot of domestic and international scrutiny if this project does move forward.
Professor Liou, we've talked about the concerns of Vietnam. How about the US? And also you said that this is part of a bigger picture, including the South China Sea.
Yes. Well, the United States, I think strategically already mentioned about, US would like to have a chip in Cambodia so as to counter China's influence in the future, perhaps. On the other hand, economically, now U.S. is talking about impose more tariffs on Chinese goods or even those goods from other countries such as Vietnam. This is relevant to the supply chain regrouping. So supply chain regrouping, Vietnam is the country benefit most. So now if this canal, the Funan Teco Canal is completed, in that case the waterway can go through Cambodia. So those raw material can come from China to Cambodia, and then exported to the United States other places. The vice versa, they can also export back to China. So that means Cambodia could be Vietnam's biggest competitor in the future. Don't forget, they are side by side. All right? So then the next one is about high-speed railway. If the high-speed railway from the Thailand down to the Cambodia, then in that case, Vietnam will be in a disadvantageous position. Vietnam talking about north-south high-speed railway, so far nothing happened. All right. So if with Chinese help, it could big difference for Cambodia. So in that case, Vietnam will face a very big challenge from Cambodia in terms of investment, technology, many other things. So that is why this is not just about strategic competition, it's also relevant to economic competition between these two South China countries.
Right. Vincent, Wang Wenbin, China's foreign ministry spokesperson, has been chosen to be the Chinese ambassador to Cambodia. What's the significance of this?
Our good friend Wang Wenbin finally found a new post. I mean, he's seen as the top tier in sort of a cadre of China's wolf-warrior diplomats, and certainly his strong rhetoric has inflamed tensions with many places in the world. But I do think that Phnom Penh isn't the most prestigious post in terms of China's diplomatic postings, but it's probably a safe post. And I think it's a post that a wolf-warrior diplomat would find very familiar. I mean, we're talking about a capital city, Phnom Penh, that literally offered to name their main boulevard running through the city, the Xi Jinping Boulevard. So I do think that his sort of wolf-warrior rhetoric would probably find a very ready audience within Cambodia, and there will be significant pressure on him to continue to upgrade that relationship and fight back against U.S. efforts to renew their relationship with Cambodia. So,
do you think it's a coincidence?
I don't know. But I do think that it's, again, a safe position for somebody that has alienated much of the international community. And so it's probably one of the few countries that he would feel at home in at this point.
Professor Liou, I want to get your perspective. Do you think that that was deliberate, sort of sensing the moves by the US side?
From the Chinese perspective, I think they did it deliberately because Wang Wenbin has served as a spokesman for 4 years. So that means that he is familiar with the Xi Jinping's thought and China's military strategy. According to my knowledge, at this moment, China feels encircled by the West through the water, sea. Right? So Taiwan, Philippines, and Japan. Right? Anyway, so that is why this is very important. The most likely place to have a war actually is Philippines. That means South China Sea. So that is why his position is very important. That means Sino-US strategic tit for tat could happen there. Not already happened there. You know, Philippines possesses 9 US bases there. So there's only one, this Ream Naval base. So that is why you see, that is why his role is very important to consolidate China's stronghold there and also try to avoid a war. If there's war, has to be win.
So I'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much, Liou To-hai and Vincent Chao, for your time today on Taiwan Talks. If you liked our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and hit subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching the show today. Stay safe and see you next time.